Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcast. You're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media. That's AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. And don't forget, you can always read my work on ESPN.com. I'll have a story up at some point later this week about the offensive line, left tackle situation. And, you know, it is what it is, folks, but I'll have a story on it in a few days. So look for that on ESPN.com. So today I'm going to wrap up another OTA practice. I'm recording this Wednesday night. We were out there for yet another day. We're going to be back out there two more times, or at least two times next week, depending on how the mini camp goes. They usually, listen, man, they've had this is as good a well-attended off-season workout session that I can remember in a long time. So my guess is that Dan Quinn will reward them and cancel the third day of the scheduled mandatory minicamp. That's typically what they do, but we will see. The veterans are off. I think they'll be practicing again Friday this week, but we will not be out there. So today was the day. One of the things we saw before I get into all the practice stuff is, if you've ever seen pictures, if you've ever been out to I was going to call it Redskins Park because I'm still used to that, but Commander's facility, you know that they have the four fields, one of which has been AstroTurf since they opened the place in 1992, and the AstroTurf has not changed. It is a piece of garbage and has been an embarrassment, to be honest, because why don't you get that fixed? Usually what they would use that turf field for was put tents up there, if you bring groups in, you're going to put a tent up there to watch a practice on the other side of the field. For media last year, that's where we were. Our tents were set up on the AstroTurf field. Well, guess what? The AstroTurf is no more. This is yet another little minor change that Josh Harris are investing in, tearing up that AstroTurf field, and they're going to put in another grass field. That would give them 4 grass fields. So putting up a picture of the turf field so you can actually see that, yes, it is being done. I don't know when I think that field, Dan Quinn said that field would probably be ready at the end of training camps. You got just a lot to tear up. You lay the sod down, all that, make sure it catches, when it takes, etc. So if for whatever practices are open to the fans this year at training camp, you will see a new field going in. I will say they did improve the irrigation system for the other fields. So those have been better over the last several years. It used to be horrible. Like you would see, there are a couple times I was out there where you'd see massive flooding in some of theirs. If we got a lot of rain, they'd have to go in the bubble because those fields would be unusable. It's a swamp area. That's where this thing was built. And that's not Dan Snyder's fault. This was built in 1992, but they needed to upgrade it, and they finally have. And the last step is getting rid of the AstroTurf field that has been in existence for 30-some years. I'm trying to remember the last time I remember them actually practicing on that. It's been a long time because it just wasn't safe anymore. There's a lot of breaks in the turf, etc. So again, they would use it for groups that would come in and visit and just put them on there. And it would get pretty damn hot, I will say. Anyway, it's gone. Adios. So let's get to practice, and they did some 11-on-11 work. They started doing that a couple days ago, or I don't know if it was yesterday or whatever, but we got to see 11-on-11 for the first time. Really, again, because there's no pads, it's really hard to tell with the D lineman and O lineman. So there's a little bit on that. But anyway, one of the things too, people ask about kickoff returners. A lot of guys are working there. They had I think it was 12 guys, 6 different sets of 2 guys back there. So basically you're going to have 2 guys deep. So one will be a lead blocker. The other one's going to be returning the ball. That's how it's going to go. Because otherwise, if you didn't, it's just really hard for one guy to get back there and do it. So you're going to need 2 guys back there. So they're working in tandems. Guys like Austin Eckler's back there, Jahan Dotson, Kaz Allen, of course, Emmanuel Forbes, Sam Restill, Dax Milne. Of the guys that we watched today, and it's really hard to tell, but Austin Eckler looks pretty good back there. So I could see him certainly playing a role. I mean, he had one of the better cuts and just very patient in cutting. And then I think Sam still did a nice job with that as well. So anyways, just some observations there. Be more to pay attention to during the season or during training camp. And the new kicker, Ramiz Ahmed did work today. He was 5 for 5, whatever it's worth. And people do ask, like we did ask Dan Quinn about his plans for this. Like, is he still going to use a kicker? And the answer is right now is yes, they would still use a kicker. They're not going to go out and do anything. They're not, unless there's somebody that they discover can actually kick, because the kicker now becomes a bigger part of the coverage unit than they were before. But it's still hard. You still got to make a guy with a good, accurate kick. So that way, it's not like you can just take some O-line, some defensive back or receiver who maybe could do it, and then put him back there, because it does require some touch. There's other things that go with it. So that's why I think, there's a lot of chip shots, like for a golfer or something like that. This is more about accuracy than it is distance. So it's your short game, right? So anyways, so they're still planning on using that. And with Ahmed, I said this the other day, I don't believe that he's the final kicker. I think there are a lot of guys not a lot, but there will be certainly a few guys that become available, whether after the UFL season is completely over or during training camp, where teams that have 2 kickers, including New England, as Bram Weinstein and I talked about today. And he reminded me, like, Patriots have 2 kickers, one of which is Joey Sly. So it's not, I think they're going to have their choice of it. They will get a veteran kicker in here at some point, I do believe. It's just a matter of when. So anyway, there you go. So they worked. One of the things too with the returners is the guy that you'd see right there with them is Dan Quinn. So clearly has an interest in special teams, and most coaches do. Although the one coach who didn't was Steve Spurrier, but that's another story, and I'm going to save it for another day. But Quinn was back there talking to the returners, because this is new for them too. Like, this isn't the same old returning ways, right? So there's going to be a little bit more patience and cutting ability, et cetera. But he was just back there kind of, you see him motioning sometimes what he wants them to do, how he wants them to go. And then he'd be behind the play, and as they're running up, he's running about half speed behind them. And of course, hat turned backward. But anyways, very involved, very energetic. And that, to me, is how all these practices have been, not just because of him, because I think a lot of coaches have that sort of energy. And when you talk to players, like we talk to the guys after practice, and guys use the words juice, energy, over and over again. And there's a reason for that. And I think it stems from not just Quinn, but the coaching staff he hired, because it starts with the main guy. But if you hire a bunch of guys who aren't that way, you're not going to have an energetic team. You're going to have one guy who is, but a lot of guys who aren't. And I do think there's a lot of guys in the staff who share that energy. And, we'll see what this means during the season, but I do know that there's a lot of energy, and guys seem to enjoy what they're doing out there. And I think they enjoy coming to work. And I think that's a big deal. And I talking to Andrew Wiley about this after practice today. And one of the things he talked about was how he's like, we talked to him, it's probably around 3:30, something like that. So a few hours after practice that it had ended. And he said, there's still like half the guys are still in that locker room. So doesn't always happen. If guys are leaving there right away, it's not a good sign. But this group, that you get a lot of guys in there, and some of it's the newness of it, and I think the energy from it. By the way, they do have the cornhole and ping pong table back in the locker room. I always felt that was one of the more ridiculous things to discuss was, oh my God, they have a ping pong table in the locker room. One of the things the ping pong table does is it brings the guys together. So I remember talking to players that, I would never talk to this guy if it wasn't for the fact that we had this ping pong table in the locker room, because you're playing with different guys, and it gives you, it again, brings guys together. They would have tournaments. It brings guys together. It's not forsaking other jobs. Like, it's part of it's, if you're there for 10 hours, sometimes it's good to have something that can blow off a little steam and bring guys together. So I always felt like that was one of the more what I find helps a team win? Good quarterback play and good coaching. The locker room, if they have games in there or not, is no bearing on it one way or another. So, and that's one of the things that Wiley, I think some of the guys, I don't remember if it was Biadasz or Wiley talking about this, but there are I think it was Biadasz talking, one of those guys talked about how, and Quinn had changed up the locker room too. Before, it was segmented by unit. So you'd have, receivers together, D-line together, basically like that. Well, it's not like that now. So you have offensive linemen sitting, talking or being locker partners with, maybe Jaden Daniels or a defensive lineman. And it introduces you to more people in that locker room, and it gets to know the guys, but that's what those games do as well. So again, always felt like it was, I know a lot of people are like, oh, they suck, take that away. Like, I don't think it doesn't have any bearing on winning or losing. It's a showy thing if you do that, but it doesn't have any bearing on wins or losses. Now, if they're not studying, that's something different, but they're not in there at those times. That's not what they're doing. That's done in meeting rooms. It's done on your own time, but there are definitely times where you need to kind of bring guys together, have a way to unite a team, right? And I think, or get to know other guys, because the best teams are the ones where guys actually care for one another. And ping pong's not going to necessarily do that, but it does help you get to know somebody else. And sometimes it's just good to compete too. So anyways, those are back in the locker room. So there you go. So with the 11-on-11, again, you can't see much of the O-line, D-line, but one thing to note that Trent Scott was the guy first with the offensive line at left tackle. Lucas was working with the second group at the right tackle, and Brandon Coleman was with the second group at left tackle. So now you know. And I'm going to have a future podcast where I talk a little bit about the O-line and how things, like, okay, let's say you don't get some stud left tackle, because you're not going to find a stud left tackle. The question is, can you find someone who could be a quality starter for you? If not, then how do you manifest this whole situation, and how do you make it work? And there are ways there are ways you can mitigate some other issues. And one of the ways is by not dropping back to pass 70% of the time. Anyway. But anyways, so that was part of the lineup there. And again, I'm not going to get into how all these guys looked all the time, because when you put pads on, then it's different. But I found the rotation there, the setup, interesting, and see where that goes next week. And sometimes you work guys there to see, okay, what is this? What can this guy do? What can this guy do? The defense was more about rotating guys. At times they're putting rookies like Jordan McGee and Dominique Hampton with the vets, just to see what they can do and what they can handle. And Joe Witt, we talked to him after practice. That was one of the things he talked about. Is like, you like to get a sense of what a guy can do. And sometimes by putting him in with the veterans, you get to see, because if they don't know what they're doing, the vets are going to let them know. And, you're now letting down the veteran player. So you better be up to speed, and you better be ready. And I think listen, you're not putting those guys in those situations if you don't think there's a reason to see what they can do, right? It means that they've been showing you some things. I think McGee will be an interesting guy. I think both of them will be. I like the Hampton pick, but I think McGee's going to be an interesting guy to watch as well. And one of the things that Witt talked about is how he doesn't carry himself like, he's not like a rookie. In his mind, he's like, he doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He just, that's a good sign for him. So see how he progresses, right? That's a good spring development for the Commanders at that position. They also worked on some scramble drills today. You'd have, like, this is like from their own end zone. So basically what you have is you have like 5 receivers running routes, or 5 guys running routes, because it's running back, tight end, and then a couple receivers. And then you'd have one main quarterback drop back, and you have the other guys that are behind the play. And they just, because they want every guy, when any guy rolls out, they're all going to catch a pass. That's a little bit different than it's been in the past. And if it's good or not, I don't know. It's different. But they did do some scramble drills. So the guys would run their routes, quarterback would scramble, and then they'd have to adjust. And you have to do that because it's not just Jaden Daniels, it is Marcus Mariota as well, because he can do that as well. But Jaden Daniels, of course, can do it very, very well. So I think that's something, but that's why you have to work on it and get used to doing that, and knowing, like, okay, guy scrambles is right in this situation. What do you do? Where do you go? And so that's what they do. But they always like to, it's one of the things I've noticed, like, guys going routes, everybody's going to catch a pass. And also there are times, like, even with the quarterback drills warming up, they'll have the quarterback will hand off to the back, but then someone will toss him ball and he's going to throw the ball as well. So what that kind of does too, is it forces you to carry out that fake, and, maybe just to get someone maybe to pause if they think that you're dropping back to throw the ball. Right. So that's, little things like that can help at times, I suppose. And that's why you do it. That's why you practice them. Habits. I think I told you Ahmed was 5 for 5 on his kicks. I think the longest was from like 45, snuck it over by about 6, 7, 8 yards. But 5 for 5. So there you go. In the 11-on-11, one of the things, De'Ami Brown had one drop on a screen. I think it was a screen, if I remember right. And another time where it looked like could have been not the best throw from Daniels, but I think it looked like Brown could have made the catch on a little, he ran like a little out and the ball was a little bit behind him, a little bit low, but certainly could have caught it. So, not the best throw, still could have made the catch. What else we got here? I want to talk obviously about Jaden Daniels. So with Daniels, there are a couple things that, oh, by the way, because there were a couple times I meant to talk this too with Mariota. There were definitely a couple times where some of the throws could have been a little bit better, a little bit off target. But again, this camp is all about Jaden Daniels. So we know what Marcus Mariota is, what he is as a quarterback, et cetera. So on Jaden Daniels, I like that there are definitely times he makes good, quick decisions. I think that's a good part of his game. And, I think that bodes well for that quick game stuff when they want to run some of the quick game. They also ran some no huddle. And one of the first plays they did that. And this is what I like, because this is one thing that Dan Quinn said he liked about Daniels coming out, but it's what they like to do defensively. You see on this play, you see the safeties are moving around a lot. So I think it was Martin and Chin. Those are the first two safeties out there. When they went just the two deep ones, but those guys are rotating, coming up, dropping back, moving around, and you're not sure what they're going to do, but it does trigger something for Daniels, and he sees it. He's kind of signals to both sides and starts to use a hard count to test and to maybe draw them and to maybe get a few more clues as to what they're going to do. But he clearly knew where to go with the ball, because ball snapped, hitched to tight end Sinnott. Nice throw, good catch, knows where to go. They didn't fool him. That's what you want to see. And I think that's one of the things that has impressed them about him is just the preparation that he puts into it. But you see it in situations like that. Not perfect. He's not perfect, but he's certainly looking. He certainly looks pretty good at times, right? I mean, he certainly looks like a guy that can play and will be able to play and, has his strengths. He does not, I'll say this, he does not look overmatched at all. So that's a safe thing to say. There were a couple of times where there was some indecision by him and you could see it. And sometimes this is where it's good, right? Go back and you see this, maybe, you see a situation come up like, where they're in a certain coverage and you're not expecting it. And so how do you respond? And so a couple of times I think they got him on a little bit like that, where, there were a couple pumps that he made, and, talking about this with Logan Paulson sideline. And sometimes you wonder, like, sometimes there's indecision, right? But it's good, because this is when you want to see these situations, go back, watch the film. Okay, hey, in this situation, you want to do this. So the more you see of those situations, the more you can learn. A guy like that who's at the facility early all the time, studying, then I think that stuff that's the stuff they hope certainly gets cleaned up as we progress through camp. And it's going to happen in the season too, because you're going to see things in the season for the first time ever, despite what you might see in practice, despite what you might see in the preseason. They're going to throw crap at him in the season that it's going to be, okay, what do you do? So this is where the preparation comes, and it's where the growing pains come in. But if you study and you have the talent, it can pay off. I'll say that. But there were the times with indecisions. But again, that's what you go through. If you're not having some of that, then I would wonder, like, not wonder, but man, it'd be kind of incredible. Shows a lot of patience, a lot of poise. Now, again, the rush isn't live, so it's not going to get you, but he did show the patience and the poise. And there was one time where he's really good on those crossing routes, as far as like letting it develop, not getting it out too soon. Did have, he's really good with that. Now, he did have one miss to McCaffrey today on that, just off his hands, a little bit long, but the patience and the poise were there, and that's a good thing. And he's a pretty accurate down thrower. So like you don't worry so much about that because it has not been a theme with him where he misses all that often. And we're talking like just off his hands. Would not have been able to catch it, but again, patience and poise. Another throw I liked, he threw to Zach Ertz that he was covered. Safety Tyler Owens, undrafted free agent, was played underneath coverage, pretty good coverage. Throws it just over the top, really good touch, and just a nice ball to Ertz on another crosser. And that's one of the things when guys talk about him, about Daniels, they always talk about his arm. It's like it's not like he has this howitzer of an arm. It's a good arm, but he's accurate. That's what, just that touch that he has is really, really good. The next play after the Yurts play, I like, there's some poise and vision in the pocket as the pocket starts to collapse. He steps a little bit to his right to create better vision and a throwing lane for himself, gets the ball out to running back Michael Wiley, a nice completion there. Ertz, by the way, had a couple nice grabs today. He had a really nice grab off of just a nice catch off of Mariota pass, where he's running to his left. He's looking back, has to reach back to the other way, to the middle for a grab, but it was a good grab. And, I think that's good. And also there's another time, and I'll get to this later, but the other thing with Ertz, and I talked about the leadership stuff last week, and you saw that with Ertz today. And listen, who knows what they're talking about, but after one series, you see Ertz going up to Daniels, just having a discussion. I don't know what they're talking about. They could just be talking about like, hey, what are you eating after practice? I don't know. Chances are you're talking about what's going on in the field because that's what they're there to do. But I like that the veteran tight end going up to the rookie, talking to him like that. And I think what you also like, if you're a fan or your coach or your teammate, is how receptive Daniels is to those kind of situations. And I think most players should be, of course, but you never know how guys take that, or not even take it, but it's like, this is a discussion that can help both them cement, develop the relationship both on and off the field. Right. So I don't want to make a big deal out of a few minute conversation, but those are things like you like when vets are going up and talking to rookies, and it's a tight end and the quarterback. That's even better. So, and anyway, by the way, third offensive line, Ricky Stromberg was a center, Mason Brooks was a left guard, and Braden Daniels was a left tackle, for whatever that's worth. I thought you might like to know that. All right, so one of the last things they did in the 11-on-11 portion was a drill. They put 28 seconds on the clock, and it's at the 20-yard line, and the team is down 6. So the offense is down 6. They got to score a touchdown, no timeouts left, and 28 seconds. So, but it's funny because pretty sure I heard this right, but one of the defensive players from the other side of the field yells out, "The champagne room is closed." I swear I'm really sure that's what he said. And I'm sure maybe there's some of you on here laughing because you may know what I take it is end zone is closed, baby. So nobody's getting in there because, well, that's the celebration room, man. It's champagne room. I like champagne. I know what that's used for. Johnny's not at the club doing that, but Johnny likes champagne I like some good celebration champagne. Anyways, so but anyway, the defense did celebrate. So in Daniel's first time, and he was working he's definitely taking reps with the first offensive line and all that, because let's face it, that's where he's going to be, whether it's August 1st, September 1st, whatever, he's going to be there at some point. So his first play, a little tunnel screen to Mitchell Tinsley. Tinsley, by the way, had a couple nice grabs. Nothing like wow and just whatever, but good grabs. I'll get to his one little mishap. I'll just say mishap. So he gets it to him, gets a few yards, and spike. Then on the next third down, nothing's there. Throws it out of the back of the end zone to give him one more play. Fourth down from around the 10-yard line, 10, 15-yard line. So on this play, though, he tried to hit Tinsley. Nobody was really open, but he tries to get to Tinsley in the back corner of the end zone. But Tinsley slipped on the play, and then defensive back Nick Whiteside's there. Should have had the pick, drops it, and was chided for it by his teammates. Definitely should have had the pick, but again, so they didn't get any points. That's after that series is when Ertz went up to Daniels and was talking to him behind the play. Then Mariota goes next. Good rush by Dorrance Armstrong. And I know I said it wasn't doing that, but he really did kind of drive his guy back. I think it was Wiley. And Wiley's been fine this spring. So but Armstrong with a good rush just showed some power. But again, no pads. There you go. Anyways, so Mariota gets it out to the left to, geez, I can't remember who it was. I think it was running back Jeremy McNichols on this. Actually, I'm sorry. So he first pass completion, second down spike, third down out to McNichols, but he can't get out of bounds. They can't get another play off. So you got to get that one out of bounds. That was a mistake. And at the end of that, like, I think there was some yelling, all that. And, I think there was some offensive guys wanted to go another play or said that they got it off or they had another second to go. The refs, they had officials there today. They waved it off, and Emmanuel Forbes yelling out, "That's a ball game." Hell no, meaning they didn't get it off. So that was practice today. Now, after practice, again, we talked to a handful of guys. It's funny because there was a theme with guys that have been coached by these guys before, and whether it's Biotish, Armstrong, Chin, they know some of these guys, and like that familiarity certainly helped. Money always plays a difference, folks, but when things are equal or close, familiarity definitely can be a factor. And I think that was one of the things that seemed to play a role in some of the guys coming here. And one of the guys we talked to too is Jamin Davis. And it's funny because, they signed Bobby Wagner and Frankie Luvu. That means less playing time for Davis at that position. Now he's going to get time when he had three linebackers, but they are working him at defensive end too, as an edge rusher. Davis looked as happy as anybody to be talking to us about this. Like, he's not worried. You would think, okay, this is a contract year for him. But we don't know where this is going to go. I mean, could he really develop as an edge rusher? Possibly, sure. Why not? But he's taking time there, but he's losing some time at linebacker potentially because of all this. But he's excited. His eyes light up when he's talking about this stuff. And he's one of the ones talking about the energy, and he's a big guy saying playing with your hair on fire. But that's how these guys are coaching, and it's how Joe Witt coaches, but it's also how they wanted to play. And, it's funny because like guys like Chin and Armstrong, who've played for some of these coaches, especially Armstrong, knows that, like, hey, when they say they want to play fast and physical, they really mean it. Now, every defensive coach says a variation of that. They all want to be that way, but are you getting your guys to play that way? And how do you get them to play that way? That's always the key. It's not, these guys are all physical. That's why you're playing this game. Some guys more than others, right? Some guys just hit more than others. But I think the way you get there is by how you communicate, how you set up the rules of the defense, et cetera. If you can get them to play fast, usually it's because they know what they're doing. They're well schooled in it, but also you don't have 3,000 rules off of, if this happens and this happens and this happens, and you do this, this, and this, and this. Sometimes it's like, hey, if this happens, stay in this, play your assignment, play fast, right? So there are things you can do like that I think this group is going to do. And the other thing you always hear too is there's a lot of chatter in practice, a lot. And I think that stems from coaches emphasizing it. Chris Harris was really good at getting guys to do that when he was here, but also I just think you have more coaches who are more cognizant of that with this group. That can make a difference. But I also think you have players that are really good at that too, whether it's Wagner, Jeremy Chin can do that. He's a veteran back there, so he should be expected to do that. And again, Wagner is certainly a guy that's going to be doing that a lot as well. So getting the guys in there that do that well in the field helps, but also then making sure the coaches are emphasizing it over and over and over again. That's again, I always go back to Chris Harris because that's certainly something that he would do a lot of. So, but I just found that interesting. We talked to Quan Martin a lot about the movement and the coverages and all that. And, again, I think he's a guy that I liked at the end of the year. And I liked him when they drafted him, but I also liked how he played at the end of the year. And I think he's going to fit in well with this group. I think he'll fit in very well with this group. So then we talked to Witt. I can tell you, like, one of the guys, like, you ask anybody out there about Frankie Luvu, they start to smile. Like, he's a guy that they really, really like. And Witt said of Luvu, he is the heartbeat of competitive, hard-nosed defensive football. Call him a fun guy to coach. So that's what they think of him. This is, you're going to like him. Like, he's one of the guys I really enjoyed watching after they signed him, going back and watching his film, because he's going to play the way that I think you like. And I think he's going to be, stay healthy. He's going to be very productive. And the other thing that Witt really emphasized, because he didn't want to give anything away, I don't blame him. Like, why would you give anything away to us on June 5th? It would be dumb. And they're not going to do that. Now, a lot of people, they know Dan Quinn, they know what they did in Dallas. And you talk to people, like you talk to Dorrance Armstrong, some other guys, like, hey, this is a lot of what they were doing in Dallas. But we don't know how they're going to do it with this personnel. Like, you can know the style, you can know the style of the defense. Okay, they're playing this is their emphasis. But how are they going to use Jamin Davis? How are they going to use Emmanuel Forbes? Well, obviously he's going to be a corner, but what are you going to ask him to do? And what kind of situations will you put him in, et cetera? Like, those are the kind of things. How are they going to use Frankie Louvu? Well, you watch how Carolina use him, and I think they're going to use him somewhat similar because the guy can move around a lot. But how's it going to look with these guys around him? So that's something which I like when like, there's no reason to tell us exactly what they're going to do. Like, why? Wait till the season, then watch, and we'll all figure out together. But the other thing Witt said too, and it reminded me a little bit of Greg Williams, because he'd say like, hey, we don't have 11 starters. We have 17 or 18. All right. That's a good thing for a coach to say. And I agree with, like, I like when coaches use their talent and they get guys to buy into, hey, you're part of the starting unit because we have you in this package and we might open up with this package. That's what a good coach is going to tell any player. And it also highlights, like, you're using guys, you're finding ways to use everybody. And Greg Williams is really good at that. I also think, like, the other key part to that is you can do all that, but you have to have really good assistant coaches who can communicate what these guys do well, and then what things they might fit in well with. And so, just because you're saying that doesn't guarantee anything, but if you have the guys that can then also help, okay, this is what these 5 guys, these are the packages we need to do for these guys, that can help a team. So anyway, but I like the mentality of it, and we'll see where it goes. The other thing he talked about with Jamin Davis, why to the edge? What do you like about him that might translate well to the edge? And he's big, strong, fast, with his ability to bend. So that's one of the things they like about him, but they're not going to go into detail about how they're going to use him with that, of course, as I just explained. Davis, though, he was very happy. I'm telling you, he was smiling when he was talking to us. So he seems very happy about his role. Not that this is about all that, but it just, again, it speaks to, I think, what they feel could go on here and what they might be able to build as a defense this year. Again, chatty defense, you hear a lot, and I think that's all good. I told you how he likes Jordan McGee, he likes how he carries himself, not like a rookie, not a lot of mistakes. Hampton, again, puts these guys in with the vets, et cetera. And then of course, Dan Quinn spoke before practice, and he was asked about Brandon McManus, because you got to get that out of the way. It's a move they made. It's a guy they knew. And I had told you guys this, that I did not think that they knew of these allegations before it was made public on May 27th. And Quinn said that publicly for the first time, that they didn't know until May 27th. And the only thing there's not a lot you can say about this situation. First of all, it didn't happen when he was here. It happened in Jacksonville. Secondly, they didn't know about it. So that was the lesson that he delivered to teammates, to his players. The investigation's ongoing. They're not going to talk about specifics. But the only thing he did tell his players, like, hey, if you got a situation going on that might be something down the road, let us know. And maybe there's something that we, meaning the coaches, can help them with. So that, and he was speaking generally. He wasn't talking about, like, if McManus had done this, we could have done that. He didn't say that. But he did say for other players, if they have something going on, let the coaches know, let them know, because there's a support system there that may be able to help what's going on, and maybe, if they know more, they can look into other things, whatever. But with McManus, I just think it was too hard. I think the fact that they didn't know was not very good for him sticking around. So, and they did wait a week to release him. But anyway, so that's on that. Then on Jaden Daniels, one of the things that Quinn talked about, they liked working some 2-minute situations. He liked his urgency in there. Again, a lot of that comes from, what kind of studying are you doing? And if you're not lost out there, and I don't think he's lost at all, then it speaks to how the preparation. So all that has been, the preparation part seems to be pretty good for Jaden. It seems to be very good for Jaden Daniels. On Emmanuel Forbes, did ask about that, and Quinn likes the word superpowers. I'm sure said one of his superpowers is taking the ball away. They like that too. They like his length. He's not his prototypical in terms of height and weight, not his prototypical guy, but he does have good length, and he absolutely does. And so I'll be curious to see how Forbes develops over the summer. I've told you before, he's not going to be handed the starting job. And some people took that to mean that I said he wasn't going to be a starter. I've never said that. But what I would say is that he was not guaranteed to be a starter. He's not just going to show up and be the starter like last year, where they kind of eventually, like, he's moving, he's going to become the starter. This year, he's got to earn it. So that's a good thing. And if he does it, more power to them, more power to him, because it would mean that he earned it. And that's a good thing. And then on Jamin Davis, again, going back to him, he is doing some work with Ryan Kerrigan at times after practice, just on some pass rush moves and picking his brain on that, because, Ryan obviously played some 3-4 stand-up linebacker, also had to obviously rush with his hand in the dirt. So in the one time I did see Davis rush, he was over on the left. He was on the left side of the defense, not in a 3-point stance. Pretty good rush, gets in there, has to pull up, but didn't see a whole lot otherwise because I wasn't focused on him today. So anyway, that's all I got, folks. It's a big report. We'll be out there on Thursday talking to the assistant coaches because we have assistant coach availability. I will be back with another episode on Friday. Thanks for tuning in. I'll talk to you next time.